Isolation Protocol Day 102. Some things that were supposed to be starting up as Monday have been rolled back, so they won't be starting up Monday after all. Um, things Numbers have been going up instead of down, so yeah, they're backing off on the opening protocols. So we are still on isolation protocols. Uh, let's see. Went to the cemetery today. That's a place where I like to go and find a cute crypt and uh, sit on the steps of the crypt or in front of a nice memorial of some type. These are big memorials. We're not talking little headstones. We're talking some of them are huge. Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer type memorials where and crypts where you could actually go and live in some of those. Yeah, they're big. Um, it's not an old cemetery. It's 300 years, give or take. So fairly young as cemeteries go, but it's really fun looking at all the different names and the family names and realizing that there are street names and businesses still named after a lot of those around here. Even cities named after some of the people in the cemetery. So it was a lot of fun. Uh, Carrie, Joe, and I were going to go to a sandwich shop that we like to go to, and that's where Carrie and I normally write. Um, but they are still not open for indoor dining. So we agreed to meet there, and I drove up there, and the building is boarded up. And a lot of buildings in that area of town have all their windows boarded up because of uh, um, some of the riots that were going on, and just for protection, if they didn't have broken windows, they would put boards over their windows too. But most of them have banners and signs or even spray painted directly on the plywood. We are still open. Um, but this one wasn't. In fact, it had a big sheet of plywood across the front of the front door with holes cut in the plywood so that they could just bolt it on without taking the doorknobs off the door. So yeah, this plywood with a couple little holes in it where the doorknob stuck out. Yeah, totally closed. So I called my daughter, who hadn't left her place yet, and she told me to meet her at a different place. We placed our orders, and then we went up the hill a bit to the cemetery, and the guard just waved us in, told us to keep our masks on, stay distant, even though the place was closed, unless you were there for a funeral or to make funeral arrangements. There was a funeral going on, and so there were a lot of people there. But we went up near the top, and actually we ended up at the very, very top later, but it's hot and sunny and dusty there because they are remaking roads and carving out the hill a little bit to level off some sections and put in retaining walls and huge expansion project that has been in the works for years and years and years. But now that the cemetery has been closed for the last 100 days, they took advantage of that to remove several stands of trees so that they can level off the top of a hill, and they moved several of the graves to put them up on the now level ground instead of on the sides of steep hills. So yeah, these are the newer graves too, not some of the really really old ones. The old ones, they're not going to get touched, uh, but they're expanding, uh, and it's already a fairly large cemetery. So we drove around for a while, ended up driving all the way up to almost the top, found some shade. Gorgeous, gorgeous view. We could see from where we ate lunch, I could see the Bay Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, fog rolling in, And if we had circled just a little bit farther down the road, I might have been able to see the San Mateo Bridge. Um, but there was a lot of fog in the San Francisco side of the bay. So pretty much I saw the top of a couple of the buildings, Sutro Tower. I think that might have been Coit Tower that I saw, but it's actually not a very tall tower. It just happens to be on top of a hill. It's a very small tower, actually, um, but it's on top of a hill. Uh, a lot of the skyscrapers down in the downtown area are so tall that they're taller than Coit Tower, but it's still a landmark. So yeah, we saw a couple of those poking up above the fog, but for the most part, it was just a band of fog uh, between then the bay, and then the flatlands of Oakland, and then up in the hills where we were. So it was really very pretty up there. Very nice, warm, sunny. In the shade, it got a little chilly because there was a little bit of a breeze. Um, but yeah, perfect weather for a picnic. I had a falafel, and Carrie and Joe had salads. And a falafel is basically uh, a salad in a pita bread. So yeah, pretty much about the same thing. Um, let's see, what else? Uh, didn't do much crocheting or knitting because I was out driving around trying to find lunch, and then we hung out at the cemetery for a while. She sat in her tailgate. Um, I sat on some rocks that they were using to block off a road that they had carved up the road, probably to replace the paving, because the paving in some of the roads was pretty bad. Some of them weren't paved at all. And that's where we were at the edge of the construction. So the road ended there. They had a bunch of big rocks placed across the road, so you couldn't get any farther. And I sat in the rocks. They sat in their tailgate about 10 feet away. And yeah, we had a picnic. Uh, what else? Nothing else. Dogs have been behaving. Well, as I was getting ready to leave, I said, Sal, go outside. Sal goes outside. I said, Honey Bear, go outside. Honey Bear starts to go out. Sal comes back in. Honey Bear jumps out. So then I said, Sal, outside. And Sal's standing there staring at me like, oh, I don't know what you're saying. And so, of course, Honey Bear has to come back in. Sal looks at Honey Bear, turns around, and goes out. I said, all right, Honey Bear, outside. They played that stupid little seesaw game for 5 minutes, in and out, and in and out, and in and out, and in and out, and in and out. Yeah, crazy dogs. Crazy dogs. I swear they did it on purpose. They coordinated this whole thing. They looked at each other before one of them jumped in and the other out. So, yeah, they planned it. They do stuff like that when they want to go with me and they know I'm getting ready to leave. And normally I break down and say, oh, okay, fine, let's GOFORARIDE. Yeah, because if I say the words, they will be all over my face trying to help me go OUT the door. Yeah. So anyhow, uh, then I did some reading. I am reading one of the Heirs of Destiny books. Never mind. Kindle battery died. I forgot, that's why I set it down. I need to plug it in. Uh, I'm reading one of the Heirs of Destiny books from Andy Peloquin. Uh, awesome, awesome author. Cannot recommend him enough. He also has a podcast here on YouTube called Fantasy Fiends, Fiends, sort of like Friends without the R. Uh, and he is the giant because he's like way tall. Yeah, I'm not short. I'm 5'5". I come almost up to his armpit. Yeah, he's that tall. And then his partner is called the Gnome, even though he's still, ooh, that much taller than me also. But compared to Andy, Stevie is tiny. It just, yeah, it's like watching, Wesley and the giant um, fight each other in Princess Bride, except that Andy's very proportional, very well built. Yeah, um, and they're both very good looking guys too. So you want to just stare at good looking guys. One of them who rarely wears shirts. Sometimes I think he's not wearing pants either. Actually, most of the time I'm pretty sure he's not wearing pants. We want to see a couple of half naked guys. Um, Doing a really interesting podcast about fantasy creatures and writing fantasy books and reading fantasy books and that kind of stuff. Yeah, you need to check out Fantasy Fiends podcast. They do it every Thursday, but I think they're planning on changing that. And then usually like twice a month or three times a month on Tuesdays, there will be a special episode. It will be a panel discussion led by Andy and several guest authors, um, which is very fascinating to listen to some of the topics that they come up with and discuss. Um, the one that they just did earlier this week, which I have not had a chance to watch yet, is fantasy creatures in books. So I'm really eager to look at that and hear what they have to say about including fantasy creatures in your books. I like dragons. I do write with books with dragons in them. I'm writing a series of books that are about fairies. And in this world of fairies, there are also mermaids and a few other fantasy creatures. They just don't come in the first novel. The world has been developed, but I'm only using the small part of the world that the main character deals with. And since she gets two-thirds of the way through the book before she realizes that there even are such a thing as fairies, yeah, um, I did not introduce any other fantasy characters into the book. But I have four books sort of planned out, and in the third, yeah, third book, I introduce some of the other fantasy peoples, beings, whatever. Um, so yeah, a couple of them will make an appearance in the third book, although a couple of them get talked about in the second book. Again, the second book is a fairly small worldview because it is from the point of view of an 11-year-old character. 11-year-old character who runs away from home because she thinks she's older than she really is. Yeah. Um, Anything else? Gotta plug in my Kindle. Forgot to bring a fortune cookie in. Talked about the dogs. Didn't do any knitting or crocheting. I do have some cross stitch I need to do because I am more than a month behind on the cross stitch stitch along. And the what is today? Today is the 23rd, June 23rd. So the penultimate section of the stitch along will be coming out in a couple of days. Monday, I think. I think they come out on the 25th, 26th, somewhere around there. Anyhow, so that chart will be released, and I still haven't even done this month's chart. So yeah, got a lot of stitching I got to do on my cross stitch. And I would show it to you, except that I accidentally put my laptop on top of it, and I don't want to move the laptop because, yeah, then I won't have any place to put it. So I'm using it. I'm using the box that the stitching is in to lift the laptop up a little bit higher. So yeah. Anyhow, otherwise it would be on my lap and you'd be staring at boobage. You don't want to stare at boobage. Well, maybe you do. I don't want you staring at my boobage. Yeah, that's the dog snoring over there, and the other one snoring over there. I did play with them for about 45 minutes before recording this so that they would be tired and not getting in my way. I keep forgetting that they snore like chainsaws. All right, well, that's it for Fantasy Fiend podcast. Isolation Protocol Day. What did I say today was? 102? Yeah, I think 102. Yeah, I will catch you later. Bye.